Hello. This is kind of gonna be like a no script video. Um, I wanted to preface by saying, hello, I'm Murky. I am a off-tank player. I guess I was an off-tank player when Overwatch 1 was a thing. I peaked on console. I peaked rank 250 on tank. Um, on PC, I peaked Masters 2 last season. This season, I peaked Masters 3. So I know a decent bit about what I'm talking about. I'm not GM or anything, you know what I mean? I on tank in total, I have about 1,700 hours. On Sigma, I have about 500. I have about 300 on Rhine. Um, Off tank in total, I have about 600 hours. I want to say. I also play Winston Roadhog, JQ in 6v6 when she was good. It was a lot of fun. But I just kind of today I wanted to talk about um, 6v6 because I've been playing a lot of 6v6 and I kind of wanted to make like a 6v6 guide, especially specifically on off tanks. For starters, on team comp building, I'm not going to be talking about Ramatra, Orisa, and newer-ish tanks. Besides, I want to talk about Hazard a little bit just because he's really strong. But I'm not going to be talking about the other ones. Just the older-ish ones. I'm gonna create a lobby, and I'm gonna make it just I don't know what's an easy map to play on. Lijiang, I guess. Let's turn it all off and then just do Lijiang Tower. Um, uh, so I'm gonna start with the most quintessential off tank in 6v6, arguably, in my opinion, which is Zarya. I think Zarya can pretty much work in any situation against any character. In 6v6 and 5v5, she gets pretty hard countered by Bastion. Excuse me, sorry. She's countered by Bastion, Reinhardt, Winston, Zen, just things that can blow her up. But in 6v6, the thing that she can do most is she can enable her team. And what is very important about that is she basically has the ability to essentially enable any character in while she kind of takes damage. So, for example, I guess it's in 5v5 right now, so I'm gonna have two bubble cooldowns. But in 6v6, you have two separate bubble cooldowns, which is part of what makes her so good. Um, I'm pretty sure there's a way you can do that. But basically, the way you want to start fights on Zarya, if you're walking out, for example, one of the better team comps, and Zarya really only doesn't work with D.Va and Sigma, and the reason for that being is that Sigma and D.Va both eat damage, and that eating damage can kind of cause her bubble not to get value. They are still pretty good. I think the one that you don't want to use the most is D.Va and Zarya. If you're running D.Va, I think you should probably learn how to play Winston or Reinhardt with the D.Va, just because those are the two best, I guess, to combo with D.Va, or Ball. Ball's pretty good with D.Va. But what you do essentially is your main tank, which will play super right here. You'll play kind of behind them, poke beam, and then you want to use your E, which I can't E because there's no one in this. But you're gonna E, and then that will give you 40 charge because everyone is shooting that main tank. That main tank is essentially making the space for the team. Everyone is shooting that main tank. That's kind of why Reinhardt has 2,000 or something barrier. That's why Winston's pretty strong. Orisa, I would still consider a main tank, and I think Hazard is a main tank too. It's just in my opinion, I feel like they work better with off tanks than with fellow main tanks. So you bubble that person in, they're taking damage. They don't use. I guess you could technically say Ramattra and Mauga could be also main tanks. Bubble your hog, bubble your ball. It's pretty much every character that is engaging, you want to bubble them. That is kind of how projected bubble works. Self bubble, since it's on a different cooldown in 66, you're going to then once, I think you want to wait about 4 seconds. That's usually the golden windows. You want to cycle a bubble every 4 seconds because they're on 8 to 10 second cooldowns in 6v6. After you've taken space with your enemy, or not with your enemy, with your main tank, you want to then bubble yourself in and hopefully get more charge. If you can't bubble yourself in, wait for an opportunity to do so. One tip I have with Zarya is not once you have, because it's pretty easy to maintain charge in 6v6, unlike 5v5. I think 5v5 you have to kind of like feed a little bit and personal bubble yourself a lot more than projected bubble, because you only really bubble teammates if they're getting dove by like a tracer, or for example if you have a Reaper or Genji and they're diving onto their team, bubbling them because they usually become, you know, bubble value. So at least on this map specifically, you want to start, I usually, unless you're TPing point with a sim, you usually walk here or you walk coast. Typically you walk here and you want to take garden like this like little meadow area immediately. And I think as Zarya, I kind of play here. That way I can deny this rotation and I can deny these 3 hallways, and then also up here because some hazards and Genjis can hop over this wall. To try and deny it, so that anyone on my team that is taking significant damage and is at risk of death, you can kind of projected bubble them. I want to talk about specific team comps. For Reinhardt, that was kind of the example I made. Winston, you want to bubble his dives. For example, if there is a hit scan playing here or here and he dives up there, you want to bubble him. Kind of just get in a position where you can bubble him and then shoot his team, or shoot who he's diving, you know, left click, for example. Another thing on Zarya, I don't usually pick the perk that allows you to get into certain places. There are certain rollouts and stuff you can learn on certain maps. Like, for example, you can jump off of carts. On Kingsar, you can jump on the little telephone booth. But that's how you play with Winston. With an Orisa, it's kind of the same as a Reinhardt, except she doesn't take space. You want to bubble her when she's not using her jab spin, because her jab spin's kind of like Defense Matrix and Sigma suck, where AU can get sucked, and it's kind of hard to, you know, get charged when they're sucking energy. Fortify, another thing. You kind of want to bubble Orisa when she doesn't have cooldowns. Right, so when she's going out, like she's swinging out like this for a jab, and she's trying to jab someone that's standing here, and she's at risk of, you know, taking a significant amount of damage, that's when you bubble her. You do not bubble her, because essentially every tank has a way to, you know, stop or mitigate damage, but the best way to prevent that is by, you know, bubbling her when she's going to use a specific cooldown. Sigma, you want to bubble him when he's trying to swing out for a rock, if he needs to. You know, you can always use those cooldowns defensively, but you want to kind of bubble them when they are not in positions to, you know, be using their cooldowns defensively. I guess you can probably do this. When you're higher charge, you can hop up this, because the charge matters for Zarya. And then I think on when you're playing with a Roadhog, it's kind of the same thing. Roadhog and Ball are kind of unique, where they can be played with both main tanks and off tanks. When they're played with off tanks, you play them as the main tank, and if they're played with main tanks, you play them as the off tank. I don't know if I specified this, but the off tank doesn't need to be standing in the main. Off tanks can typically flank a little bit more, go for a frag plays. You don't have to be playing main, because you can use your team-based cooldowns to kind of protect your team from a distance. So that's kind of how Zarya works with every character. It's kind of the same with Hazard and Mauga and Ram, because you can, again, just bubble them when they use Nemesis form, bubble them when they use the Overrun, bubble them when you use Leap, just so that they have extra time to stay in before they have to use their block, their cardiac arrest, or whatever the fuck the Mauga thing is called, etc. Same with Queen. Queen is pretty bad at 6v6 and 5v5. I don't recommend playing her, at least recently, because her healing is less in 6v6, and in 5v5 she's just kind of one of the worst tanks. So, I mean, but with Queen it's kind of the same thing. I consider her more of an off tank than a main tank, because she can be played with Mauga, with Ram, with Orisa. I think she works more with the new tanks than the old tanks. She obviously works with Zarya, but I don't see her working with Sigma and D.Va, just because she is more of a more brawl focus. So you want to play her with more. She could probably work with Hazard, but your shout is kind of more of like the same thing, where you use it for your team sometimes, or for your main tank for them to engage. I'm not going to talk too much about Queen. The next one I want to talk about, though, is D.Va, which is probably banned every game, but when she does get nerfs or does stop getting banned every game, she's very, very good, in my opinion, at a lot of things. So with Zarya, you have like limits to what you can do. D.Va has less limits. So for D.Va, for example, one of the main things that you can do on D.Va is you can contest high ground, which Zarya really struggles with, and Sigma, you kind of just throw a shield. but with D.Va you can actually be there and you can kill that person. So you basically want to dive onto their hit scan that are on high ground. If they have a Mercy, you generally want to focus the Mercy, since she's fat now and she doesn't really have much movement. You obviously want to eat damage for your tank. Hanzo Storm Arrow, Bastion Turret Form, Mauga Cardiac Overdrive are good things to eat because those are very, very good at shield break, especially Storm Arrow. Storm Arrow is really, really strong against shields, against Reinhardt. That's why Hanzo kind of counters Reinhardt in a little bit. So you kind of like want to eat that. You can either eat it from high ground, you can eat it from safety, where your Reinhardt is playing here and you can eat it from here, or you can eat it from above. So you can basically kind of because your defense matrix really can't be canceled other than maybe rock or hook. Those are the only two things that can really cancel your defense matrix. And as long as you're saving boosters for when they're doing things, you kind of want to just booster onto their people that are out of position. So for example, if the Roadhog is swinging out for a hook, you want to kind of pressure him. If someone gets rocked or gets hooked or gets speared or whatever stun that they receive, you typically want to eat damage for them because stuns are combo abilities. They aren't exactly one-shots. Widows are, your lovely, lovely best friend because that's your, public enemy number one. You want to dive that person. You don't want to feed for it, and I think inting for kills is something that's a lot better in 5v5 than in 6v6. In 6v6, you get a lot more value from living than dying. The Vendetta playstyle is kind of how tanks are played. For example, if I can get 2 kills with Primal and die, if I can kill a DPS and a support as Winston, that is a good tank trade in 5v5. That is not a good trade in 6v6 because you are way, way, way more important to stay alive as an off tank in 6v6. I think an off tank is more important in my opinion than a main tank because they can do more, they're more flexible. The ability to also eat ultimates. Now, telegraphing your plays is the kind of worst way to play as D.Va. Saving your defense matrix for that grab, what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and throw it. If they're smart enough, they're going to throw it in between when you use defense matrix and when you don't, because that's a 1-second cooldown. It's kind of the same thing when Rhines will shatter or other Rhine when they use their fire strike, because that's a 0.6-second window that they can get a free shatter pretty much. You don't want to telegraph your plays. Same with Sigma Shield when you're trying to block shatter or ultimates. You don't want to just not use your shield because then that shows that, hey, I'm saving this for this. Or with your rock. For example, I picked the Suck perk that refreshes your rock cooldown because then that makes my rock less telegraphed against Sigma Fluxes. I don't really see the value with the shield perk because if I have good shield management, I don't really need that perk. But that's kind of how D.Va's played. That's kind of like a quick rundown. I would actually have to play games to kind of show you. And I'm probably, if people like this guide, I'm probably going to do more on this in the future with other characters, doing playing some games with them. I'm not good enough to do an unranked GM or go on a new account or anything, but I'd play on my main and kind of show you my thought process on how to play this character. Sigma is the character I have the most hours on, and I think you do the most with Sigma by doing consistent damage. That's kind of the value that he gets. If you're playing with a Roadhog or a Ball, you want to play main. I think that you can be the main tank sometimes in those instances because you can play main and you can kind of play for your core. So for example, if you have a Cass and a Zen, right, you want to play near your Cass and Zen so that they do not get dove, because it is scary to dive someone if they're near a Sigma. It is not scary if your Sigma's playing up here and they're just getting eaten alive by Tracer. It's kind of you want to play near your core. But if you have, for example, Sigma works really, really well with Orisa, or did, because of double shield, and you can still run double shield, but double shield is less strong because you can't get it for a couple minutes into the game because of perks. Running that on circuit's pretty strong. I will say Sigma Roadhog is probably one of the best comps because they're both just such strong characters and can kind of play selfishly for themselves because they're pretty self-sufficient. As long as you have a BAP or a Kiriko, or I guess even a Lari, anytime a flex DPS that deals out consistent damage, you're pretty much unstoppable. I didn't talk about Brig in the last while I was talking about D.Va, but Brig is probably going to be your biggest, for any dive tank, is probably going to be the biggest counter to you. And I don't really know how to play in a Brig in 6v6 because it's just so hard, because they can just kind of bubble or pocket their Brig so that you can't really dive the Brig and you have to dive other people, but then Brig anti-dives you. It's really, really a special thing. But Brig into Sigma is probably, or Zarya is probably the best matchup if you want to play an off tank into Brig. I would say do not play D.Va, do not play Ball, don't play Hazard or Winston. I think all of the dive tanks. I'm not going to talk about Doomfist because Doomfist is also kind of more of a stall hero. He's not, you can't really play him in 6v6 because I feel like he's a little too flimsy. Same with Junkerqueen, where you just kind of have to thread the gas. He feels more like a DPS than a tank. One of the best ways you can deny space on Sigma is with his shield. Obviously, you know, rocking people is fun and all, but the best way you can do something is throwing a shield in someone's face. So if there's a Widowmaker or a Soldier or a Freya, you know, sitting up here, you want to just throw a shield in their face. He's really good into hit scans. I think he's also good into Alari, Bap, Zen, Ana. Pretty much most flex supports he's pretty strong into. He's not really good into main supports. Main supports are kind of his, you know, biggest counter, specifically Lucio. He's really bad into fast comps. You know, he kind of wants to play his tempo, play slow, you know, because he's like, you know, he doesn't have any movement abilities other than his ultimate. So he's very slow. You know, so Lucio comps are going to be kind of hard to play into, so I wouldn't recommend playing him on control maps or playing him on Flashpoint unless you're like me and you're like kind of a Sigma one trick. Like I'm kind of like, I can whip out Sig at pretty much any point and get value on him just because I have so much time on him. That's kind of like, I kind of fall back to him. That's kind of why I have so many hours on him, is just because I'm like pretty consistent on him. Next up, I'm going to talk about Rein, because Rein is probably the most famous, well, there goes my camera bug. He's probably the most famous main tank. Like, he's the most, when you think of a main tank, you think of Reinhardt, right? Best way I can describe playing Reinhardt is kind of play the tempo of the game. You kind of control that and don't control it at the same time. Your positioning is extremely important as Rein in 6v6 to kind of playing where you need to be. And you can kind of feed a lot because his charge is on a very, you know, you can't control it as much as you can in 5v5, and it's on a 10-second cooldown in 6v6, I'm pretty sure, or like a 9 or 8. So it's pretty, you don't want to use that as much. You kind of want to take space, let your Zarya that's behind you bubble you in, and drop your shield when you're bubbled. You pressing tab and seeing when her mitigated goes up 200 is kind of a good way to see that, hey, the bubbles popped, or, you know, holding up your shield for a frame and seeing if your bubbles popped or not, because you can still, there is still like a a little bit of your bubble will come through the front of the shield. So not all of the charge will be blocked. You know, you want to make sure Fire Strike is kind of the way you get ult charge from range. You don't want to just be in their face constantly swinging on them. That is how you die in int on Reinhardt. Obviously, you can make big plays with your Zarya or your Diva to eat damage, or even a Sigma. There's a thing, because Sigma shield and Reinhardt's pin are the same speed. It's called the rocket condom, where basically you pin and the shield is in front of you so that you don't get stunned by anything, hinder, rock, sleep, you know, things like that. It's kind of a dead archetype. I don't really see people using the rocket condom. I saw it a lot in 2019 and 2020 when Sigma first came out because his shield was so good. But now that his shield has, you know, a third of what it used to have in health, I don't think that that's just as much value anymore. I think you get more value playing from Reinhardt, Zarya, and Reinhardt Diva, or even Reinhardt in a ball. But the best way I can say that you can play Rein is pretty much you want to take the most space for your team. You don't want to overextend per se, but I think one of the best ways that I've learned playing Rein is playing point. You don't want to play point, but like all the time. But when you cap, you need to cap it pretty much. If your team can't cap point, I want you to walk point. That is the most space you can make. For example, right, like if you're playing first and you don't have a sim, you walk here, and you basically want to shield your team here through the choke so that they can walk, and then you want to keep shielding your team through this so that they can walk, and then they can cap point, and then you hold here or here or here or wherever they're coming out of. That is kind of the most optimal way to play Reinhardt, is kind of making space for your team, and then once you have that space, holding that space or pushing them back with your presence because you have a, you know, 100 damage kill box. Also, another thing I want to say on Rein, if you are not shielding, you should be swinging. I can't tell you how many times Tracers have blinked into me and just insta-died because there's a giant kill box in their face. Also, I want to talk to you another about Rein tech, about turning your shield. This is the most important thing. It's when you're shielded, also pressing your other mouse button to kind of get a look around. Not enough Reinhardts do this to check where their team is or where they're, you know, going for this. I think that my friend just started spectating. Also, another thing for Shatter is do not be telegraphed with it. A lot of Reins will just shield and stop using Fire Strikes when they're about to shatter, or stop using pins because they're looking for it. I can't tell you how easy it is to ult track Reinhardt's because they literally will just do nothing. Right? They'll just sit here, wait, and then hammer down, and then they'll just like try to get a big play. But it's very very telegraphed, kind of like Reaper ult or Orisa ult, where I'm running in. Like obviously I'm gonna want to do that. Hold on, I'm recording a video for my YouTube. Tank guide. But yeah, that's kind of my tips for Reinhardt. Pick Reinhardt when you have a D.Va or Zarya. I wouldn't try and force Reinhardt on maps where you can't force him. I think it's probably better if this is Robert. It's probably better to pick him in situations where you have those, and on very brawl maps. I wouldn't pick him on I pick him on hybrid, control. I pick him on flashpoint. I would not pick him on escort very much because of a lot of high grounds. For example, do not pick him on Gibraltar because that is a dive map. Do not pick him on circuit because that is a poke map and you're just going to get blasted. If it's a good team, you know what I mean? Like if they're picking like Torb, any hit scan like Sojourn, even Junkrat he's hard into, Emre Bastion he's really hard into, but he's pretty good into other characters if you are able to get close, and I would try and play Reinhardt only with a Lucio. I think it's pretty hard, or if you have double flex, for example, Ana Kiri is pretty strong to run Reinhardt into, but I think it's, or with, not into, because if you have Ana Kiri, that's pretty good heals, or Kiri Bap, or Kiri Zen, or pretty much Kiriko is pretty fucking good. I think don't force him with double main support, or like low flex support heals like a Lari Zen. You're probably not gonna, because he's very resource heavy. Yeah, if you are playing with like a double main support, like a Brig Zen, for example, I want you to pick Ball. Ball or Roadhog are probably the most self-sufficient tanks because they basically play their own game. That was a weird visual bug. Ball's game is essentially you want to play health packs, especially in 5v5. Now that he has 500 health, he is very hard to play. I want you to do as Ball is I want you to disrupt. There's kind of two main play styles. It's dive and it's disrupt. If you're playing Ball with a Winston or a D.Va, what you want to do is you want to dive. Essentially, what you want to do is you want to calm, and I can't preface this enough, especially as Ball, and I guess a lot of other tanks, it does not hurt to calm. No one is going to get mad at you for hard calming in a game that you want to win, no matter what rank. If they're in a certain rank, they're there for a reason. They're not going to cock down to you, oh my god, we're calming in gold. You can calm on whatever rank you want. If you're trying to win the game, that is a good thing. Never be shy. I think the best way to play tank is to play tank and talk the whole time. And I think Ball is one of those heroes that kind of benefit from that. He's kind of a techie hero. To where, you got to learn like the wall jumps. See if I can do it. It's easier to do in a corner. Yeah, see how you can like do that in a corner and kind of get a jump, or like if you do it off of a wall, it's a little harder to do. If I can get it. I think you got to be running at it. Like that. It's a little hard. Another thing you can do as Ball is grapple up with your spacebar thing and kind of sit at a ledge like this and kind of look around, and then when people come, slam on them like this. And then, another thing is adaptive shielding. I think that his perk to get the shield is very good because that kind of turns adaptive shield into a stun blocker, which is really strong because Ball's hardest counter is not, and I want to get this out of your guys' head, Cassidy, while he counters Ball and Sombra and Ana, all these things that counter Ball, the thing that counters Ball the most is Brig. Every support player should know how to play Brig in 6v6 because Brig is probably the best character, if not D.Va. I think Brig is the best character to learn in 6v6 because pretty much everyone wants to play a dive tank. These are, without a doubt, these 5 characters are the most fun characters in the game because you can just live always, especially with that initiator passive. It's kind of easier on Hazard because Hazard in the mid fight can just wall climb and he can just gain health. Ball, when he's slamming, it's easier to slam missing health now because you get a free 60 health. I talked about the kind of the dive playstyle. It's kind of staging dives with your Tracer, with your D.Va. The disruptor playstyle, it comes from booping their team and rolling through their team. Ball is really good into Rein. Ryan comps because he is able to disrupt their positioning by booping them into your team and having them just get shredded. For example, if you have a Sierra, Sierra is very, very good into Reinhardt BAP comps because if they put a window down, you can essentially boop them all in front of the window, and then Sierra ult, that's a very good combo that I've hit before. And I think overall he's probably good in both ways. I would prefer him in the dive. So if you have a ball, ask for Winston, Diva, Hazard, Doom, etc. Probably not Doom, but other dive tanks. But I think that he also works, and I think that's when you run the dive playstyle. You want to run the disruptor playstyle when you're playing with a Sigma, a Roadhog, or a Zarya. Kind of those tanks that work and can play by themselves sufficiently without needing the staging dives. I think overall the best comp to run with ball is either Hog and Ball, which is called Hog and Ball torture because the team basically doesn't get any help and you just have two solo tanks, or Winston Ball because Winston Ball is probably the best dive comp with him. Next, I'm going to talk about Winston. Winston is one of the most mechanically challenging tanks, and I know it sounds weird when I say that, but he essentially is because you have to aim with this. This is an aim. Like, you have to aim. Everyone's like, oh, Winston doesn't require aim. He requires more aim than most characters because the way that you can kind of do a combo with Winston, and I'm going to teach you guys this, is essentially you jump up, you load your fire, and then you press that, but then while you jump, you press melee. So essentially you do that, and then you hit melee. If you can pause the video, there was a punch in that. And so that melee, if I remember correctly, will do, let's look. I don't know if it tells me how much melee does. I think melee does 40. Correct me if I'm wrong. Melee does 40, right? His jump pack does 60. So that's already a 100 damage combo that you can do just straight up. Okay, yeah, it says melee 40. So that's 100 damage if you land directly on someone. Plus your secondary fire does 60 damage. So, essentially, if you are jumping into the air and doing that, with this, you do have an 160 damage combo for free. That is why Winston is so good. Mastering that is the best way to get good at Winston, and then you just have to zap someone for a few seconds and they're dead. Essentially, I don't want you to jump in without bubble, unless you're soft engaging. So there's three kind of engages, and I learned this from a Spylo video actually. Silver Monkey will do this and will chase them into the room, and then get slept and then die. The Gold Monkey will do this, where he'll jump up here, he won't walk into this room, but he'll deny this space, and then the GM or Master's Monkey will do this. He will jump up onto them, make them use their cooldowns, and then drop, and then shoot them from here. You can't shoot them from here, but holding this space means they can't walk and can't hold this angle, because then you do this again. Soft engages, typically you don't use your bubble. I think that it's very important as Winston that if you're doing a hard engage or you're trying to jump onto like a Cassidy or a Hanzo or something, that you want to use your bubble because you could shield dance with it. Mastering shield dancing is very important. On Monkey, that's kind of how you get value and how you stay in the fight the longest. With a Zarya and Diva, it makes it easier because you don't have to use bubble immediately, or after your bubble, you can stay in the fight longer. But then I want you to jump out. Unless you are walking in to engage, jumping out is probably the best thing you can do because then you can use also bubble. If you didn't use bubble on your soft engage, you can then jump out, and if they try to chase you with their Diva or Ball, you can use bubble as a defensive thing. Another thing with Monkey, not enough monkeys do this, is peeling. I think peeling on Monkey is one of the best things you can do for your team because you do a lot of damage to flankers. Other than Reaper, for example, you do really, really high damage to Echo. If your Echo is in their team's face and not, flying, he is very, very good. He's also very, very good in the Genji. He's good in the on-run. He's good in the Vendetta because of the armor. Venture's not a very good character right now. He's very good in the Sombra, too. And then the reason that Monkey is so mechanically intensive is because of his ultimate. His ultimate Primal Rage is something I don't even have down yet, and I have, over 100 hours on Monkey. I think it takes 200 to 300 because Primal Rage, if you are good at it, can win you games. People usually use Primal as like a get out of jail free card, kind of like Diva Bomb, and I didn't even talk about Diva Bomb, but essentially Diva Bomb you use as a kind of tip to like a second life almost. People only use Primal as that, but you can use Primal to get kills too because you have 1,000 health. Jumping onto someone, swinging your camera. It's kind of like the Reinhardt thing where you could swing your camera to kind of lengthen your hitbox. And then using your jump, kind of mastering the jump, like the soft jumps where you hold S and you jump, you go slower. Using your camera movements as well. I can release a full primal guide once I'm better at Winston, but I don't think I'm classified to talk about it. But what I would have to say is get your primal down. I think primal is the most important part of Winston's kit that people don't utilize the most. I can talk about ultimates because I kind of forgot to, but I'm gonna after that I'm gonna lock Roadhog and talk to you about Roadhog a little bit. But for Diva, I would say don't go for bomb plays. You can go for bomb plays in 66 because it's kind of easier to kill someone, but the most value you'll get from Diva is actually using your mech as a second life, so that you don't die. KD saving on Diva is very important because on certain maps, like if you're playing Diva, it's very good on Hollywood and Midtown, but if you're Baby Diva, you can't jump off the map to reset. You're kind of stuck as Baby Diva, so they can stagger you pretty hard. So using bomb as that second life to kind of play that as so that you're always in your mech is probably very important. Sigma is very, very good for his ultimate. I don't really know how to explain it. You get a lot of value from ulting pretty much anyone on the cast. The only people I would say do not ult would be a Cassidy if he doesn't have High Noon, and that's why it's very important to ult track the cast. The Roadhog if he has Hook, Reaper if he has Wraith, Orisa if he has Fortify, and Mei if she has Ice Block. Everyone else on the roster is a guaranteed, if you live and don't just sit out in the open while you flux, because you want to be basically dodging and cover, you want to weave in that one shot that you have to get someone low in your ult. But you want to make sure you flux as many people as possible. Now, you can flux like 2 people. Like if you flux a BAP and the Zen, and I think that's, I don't know, I can't because it's old tech I know on SIG. As BAP, you want to land the BAP on your head, which kind of sounds stupid. But when you flux them and they're above you, you want to fly, and so that you look straight up and they're in your crosshair and you land them on your head. And the reason being is because Kiriko can Suzer herself on your head. A BAP cannot lamp himself on your head. And so what you want to do is you want to shoot the BAP with your 2 primary fires and land him on your head so that he doesn't land in your immortality field. I will say also ulting tanks is very, very good too. Zarya is kind of a little bit of a hard one because she can just bubble people that are in your flux. So, ulting 4 people is kind of the main way to go on Sigma if they have a Zarya. But if you ult like a Reinhardt, right? He has, I think, 600 or 550 health. All of his armor is gone. Right, so then your team, if you're running a ball, for example, and you just flux, the ball can just roll into the Reinhardt, boop him into your team, who's already 100 health, and just insta-kill him. Ram loses all of his armor. Diva loses, pretty much guaranteed loses her mech, right? Because if you hit a rock afterwards, it's very, very strong. Grav also, I want you to combo ults with it, but the best way you can use Grav is don't over-ult. I see a lot of reasons people will lose fights on Zarya is because they will just over ult and everyone will be like, I want the 4K, I want the 4K, so that you'll use Pulse Bomb, Sierra ult, Hanzo Dragon, Nano Boost, Rally, Shatter, Downpour. You don't need to use those ults, and I want you to very specifically calm with your team, hey, we're going to use this ult and this ult this fight, so that you don't over ult, because then the other team can just win on the ult economy and essentially cap point for free multiple times because your team is then spending the next 2 to 3 fights building ults again. And you always want to make sure that your ult economy is very good. And on tank, it is very important that you calm that because, especially with these 2 characters, they're very, very combo heavy. Even Reinhardt to some extent, very, very combo heavy. So next, I'm going to talk about Roadhog. Roadhog is probably, I want to say the easiest, not the best, but I want to say the easiest character or easiest tank to play because he is essentially you shoot. You have a shotgun. That is it. You have a hook, and that is the only thing you need to hit. He's kind of like the Widowmaker of tanks, where you just hit the cooldown and you get a kill. The obvious, and if you're new to this game and don't know how to play Overwatch at all, the one-shot combo is hook, and then you shoot and melee. And that, I'm pretty sure, let's look at it. Melee does 40. This would do 25, so 65. And if you hit the scrap gun, it does 175, so that does 240 damage. If you hit all pellets, you hit all head. Or if you hit headshot, that's going to be like a ridiculous amount of damage. So that's going to be like, I'm pretty sure he's 2x multiplier. I don't know if it tells me his multiplier. I'm pretty sure his multiplier is going to be 2x. It does a ridiculous amount of damage. So you pretty much one-shot pretty much anybody. So your job as Roadhog is just one-shotting people. And I want to make sure you are one-shotting multiple people rather than the first person. or rather than one person. Because if one person is inting all game, sure, oh, free kill, obviously. But then you were going to get that kill from your team anyways if they were smart. Like if their Hanzo is consistently lunging out of position and you can just hook him and kill him, or if their cast is rolling out, or if their Tracer's just inting onto your backline, sure. But what I want you to do is make sure you're consistently getting 2 picks a fight. Because if you can get 2 picks a fight, preferably on both their DPS or DPS and the support, that means that you can pretty much guarantee the fight. Because if someone's feeding every fight, obviously they're never going to have that player, but that's not value you're going to get from Roadhog. Roadhog gets value from getting picks you're not supposed to get. Getting cheeky angles, turn hooking. What I do to get the maximum distance to pull them closer is when I hook, I then look at the ground so that they get pulled to the ground. Or if you're around a corner, you pull them and then you turn around the corner. Or if you're far enough away from the corner, you turn them into your team. Another thing you can do is turn hooking is when they're off the map, you kind of want to hook them and then look off the map, and then it'll pull them here, and then you can get environmental kills. I think Roadhog is very, very good on Ilios. He's very, very good on Lijiang. He's pretty much good on most maps. I would say Roadhog's best counters is Mauga's a very good counter, so where Mauga's good, Roadhog is also good. He's very ban reliant too, so banning D.Va, Mauga, anything that can kind of shred his massive hitbox. And then also, just make sure you're not breathering everything, because sometimes Roadhog gets value from getting his support's ult charge, and if you don't have to use your breather, don't use your breather. I think it's very important for him to use breather when he has to, and when you like aren't gonna get healed. Like when you're on an off angle, for example, it's best for you to use breather when your Zen has to like orb someone else or whatever. Next person I'm gonna talk about is Hazard, and then I'm probably gonna be done because that's all I really have qualified to talk about. I can talk about Junkerqueen, but I haven't really played her in 6v6. I only really play her in 5v5. I could talk about Mauga too, but Hazard, the best way, and I've played a lot of Hazard this season, only like a couple hours, but enough where I can talk about him. The best way I can say Hazard you play is basically you want to lunge in, right? Use that, and another thing you can do while lunging before you get the perk is you can actually shoot while you're diving. So I don't see enough people do this. Is you want to, and I kind of waste ammo, but if you can like get someone low and pepper them while you're jumping, it kind of like helps a lot with the way that you are, I guess, built. And then another thing, I want you to wall people to where they're stuck and you basically just have a free way to just get in their face. Wall is the best way to use wall is to kind of use it to kind of make sure that they are in a stuck position. It's kind of like Mei wall, but it's smaller, and it also boops them, so you want to make sure you know how far they're going to get booped. I've done this a few times too. You can actually put wall under people that are using ults. So for example, when the 1 in 60 games you're going to see a Venture, when Venture ults, you put the wall under her and it'll boop her upward, and then you can lunge up at her. Or what I've done sometimes is I've blocked Shatter with it by shooting it at the ground when he drops his shield to shatter. It's a very, 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 like, you have to kind of like predict it almost. And what I want you to be doing in the mid fight while as Hazard is wall climbing. Because if you're wall climbing, not even like just to do anything, but wall climbing just so that you have a different angle, and you get that healing. So I will end games on Hazard having 3k, 4k healing sometimes, more healing than my Junkerqueen, just because I've been doing this mid fight and I don't need healing from my supports. And that way I can, my supports don't have to spend enough time healing me. I can be more resource dependent, I can stage dives, and they can do more damage. It's very important that you don't take as much damage on tank in 6v6 because you want to make sure that your supports can do the much damage as they can, because support damage is broken in this game. For his ultimate, I would say you don't really want to combo ults with his ult because I think it's strong as is. You definitely can if, like, they have a Trank or something, you bait out Trank with a tank ult, and I think that's very important as tank is to bait out beat and Trank with tank ults like Grav or Flux. Sometimes I solo Flux Sens just to get Trank out. But I think ults that you can combo with this, I would say Sierra ult is very, very good with this. Venture ult's very good. I think Dragon Blade is pretty good if your Genji's, like Awkward. If anyone's seen Awkward's unranked the GM, he only got Blade value in that unranked GM. It was terrible. He's not good at Genji at all. But, making sure you're doing stuff in the mid fight. Don't be like Awkward and just make ult plays. Do stuff in the mid fight. Be useful. You know what I mean? Another thing I can tell you is if you're hitting people with your spike guard, your spike guard will increase. Like the thing will increase. After that, I don't really know if I have anyone else I need to talk about. I think Mauga is pretty. I didn't really talk about the easy tanks besides Doomfist because he's not very good in 6v6, so don't pick him. But that's kind of my guide. I will update this guide later. Domina's pretty good too, but I only have like 5 hours on her, so I'm not really good at her. But you know, anyways, that is my guide. Hope you guys liked this. If anyone wants more videos like this, leave a comment. Like, tell me about what I was wrong about. If any of the people in the video are more qualified to talk about this than I am, please let me know. I hope people found this useful. And yeah, just make sure to, leave a comment. Anyways, that's Murky. I'm gonna head out. If anyone wants more Overwatch, just let me know. All right, I'll see you guys. Bye bye.